Good morning, everyone. The FDA is doubling down on banning e-cigarettes. They're warning dozens of store owners to stop selling those fruit and candy flavored vapes, which includes the best-selling brand. Here's Jonathan Vigliotti with the story.
They're made to taste like fruit and candy, but federal officials say don't be fooled. These e-cigarettes pose a danger to young people. That's why the FDA is warning 189 convenience stores and other retailers around the country to stop selling illegal disposable vapes, including Elf Bar, the most popular brand.
The flavors are geared towards children, and anything that you start or introduce in childhood is going to be addictive.
Sales of disposable e-cigarettes have more than doubled in just 3 years, according to the CDC. This despite repeated attempts to regulate the multi-billion-dollar vaping industry. In 2020, the FDA restricted flavors in reusable e-cigarettes like Juul to just menthol and tobacco. But that flavor restriction did not apply to disposables. Calls to U.S. poison control centers are up 32% in the past year. Of more than 7,000 reports of potential e-cigarette poisoning, nearly 9 in 10 involve children under the age of 5. And the average vape has as much nicotine as more than 100 cigarettes. Doctors warn that ingesting too much can lead to vomiting and even seizures. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And again, as he just mentioned there, an average vape has as much nicotine as 100 cigarettes. So that is, in fact, a lot. So new estimates show diabetes is outpacing most diseases around the world. Despite increased awareness, global health experts say the numbers are alarming. Astrid Martinez has more.
Diabetes is a leading cause of death and disability worldwide. Now, new research published in 2 Lancet journals shows the diabetes crisis is worsening worldwide, with no country expected to see a decline in rates over the next 3 decades. The study analyzed data from more than 200 countries and territories for about the last 30 years. It's estimated 529 million people are living with diabetes worldwide. That number is expected to jump to more than 1.3 billion in 2050. The research points to systemic racism and insulin access in low and middle income countries for the skyrocketing rates of disease and death. Complications from diabetes can include blindness, kidney failure, heart attack, stroke, and amputations. Researchers stress that diabetes is largely preventable and can be controlled by eating healthy and staying active. In some cases, diabetes is even reversible if detected and managed early. Astrid Martinez, CBS News, New York.
And according to the CDC, about 37 million Americans have diabetes, with 23% of adults undiagnosed. As summer heats up, health experts say beware. Some medications can cause heat intolerance and can lead to potentially serious complications. Mandy Gaither has more on how to know if your medicine may make you sensitive to the sun.
The heat and some medications, they don't always mix.
If someone's not careful and they're on some of these higher risk medications and happen to be in a heat wave with, prolonged exposure to higher temperatures, they can end up getting sicker.
Dr. Mark Conroy with Ohio State University's Wexner Medical Center says people on certain medications are more likely to end up in the emergency room for heat-related illnesses compared to those who are not on medicine. Drugs that may put you at higher risk of having problems in the heat include medications for blood pressure and mental health, antihistamines, and decongestants.
If there's reports of a heat wave coming up, I would reach out to your local pharmacist or your primary care doctor and just talk to them about the medications you're on.
Not everyone who takes higher risk medications will have a reaction, but Conroy says red flags to watch out for include signs of dehydration like dizziness, not urinating as frequently despite drinking water, and lightheadedness.
You have to be prepared. Having an emergency plan, keeping an extra bottle of water nearby, reevaluating the activities you have planned.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Conroy says it's also important to pay attention to home medications and how they are stored. Some medicines can degrade in the heat and not be as effective. He says to keep them out of direct sunlight and not to put them in hot cars. Generally, keeping them in a cool, dry place is best for most medications. All right, the search is over for that Ocean's Gate submersible that went missing near the Titanic. Officials say a catastrophic event destroyed the craft near the wreck of the Titanic. Crews found debris from the vessel far out in the North Atlantic, in the same area where the Titanic went down more than 100 years ago. The 5 victims include 3 paying guests, a renowned Titanic expert, and the vehicle's owner. Roxana Saberi has been following this search from Boston.
There was a catastrophic event.
The international rescue effort now turns to recovery.
The debris is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the vessel.
After crews found 5 major pieces of debris from OceanGate's Titan submersible, about 1,600 feet from the Titanic shipwreck Thursday.
This is an incredibly unforgiving environment down there.
A naval official told CBS News the Navy detected a noise consistent with an implosion shortly after the Titan first lost contact on Sunday, and that the banging sounds a Canadian aircraft had detected on Tuesday and Wednesday were actually from other ships in the area.
OceanGate shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. I think that's pretty clear. I wish I had been more vocal about that, but I think I was unaware that they weren't certified because I wasn't really studying it.
James Cameron, director of the movie Titanic and an underwater explorer, has made more than 30 dives to the wreckage site.
It's not lost on me as somebody who's studied the meaning of Titanic, that it's about warnings that were ignored. That ship's lying at the bottom of the ocean, not because of the nature of its steel or the nature of its compartments, but just because of bad seamanship. The captain was warned. There were icebergs ahead. It was a moonless night, and he plowed ahead.
All 5 people on board the Titan are presumed dead. It's unclear if their bodies will ever be recovered. In a statement, OceanGate said it is grieving deeply over this loss. The Coast Guard said while it will continue to investigate the event, it's now starting to demobilize some of the search effort. Roxana Saberi, CBS News, Boston.
The Coast Guard says it's investigating the debris sites to try to find out how and when the submersible imploded. All right, behind the walls, a garden blooms. It's the first time in 50 years. A tour ahead on Mid-Morning. We'll be right back. A long abandoned part of American history has been uncovered and is being brought back to life. Jim Axelrod takes us to a historic garden that the general public has never seen before to show us the beauty growing under decades of neglect.
So, original storage tunnel.
If you like a reclamation project, you'll love what Paul Orpello is overseeing at the Hagley Museum in Delaware.
There's no other post-industrial site reimagined in this way.
There's only one in Delaware, only one on the eastern seaboard.
There's only one in the world.
The site of the original DuPont factory, where a great American fortune was made in gunpowder in the 19th century, and where a DuPont heiress named Louise Crowninshield turned all that destruction into a garden.
So in the prime of her life, what did this place look like?
It looked like you were walking through an Italian villa with English-style plantings adorning it.
But then she died in 1958.
Everything that she worked to preserve, this somehow got lost to time.
Which is where Orpello comes in. Hired in 2018 to reclaim Louise's garden, the pandemic hit before he could get going, which is when he found out he didn't exactly need to.
So you're walking around out here, you're seeing flowers that haven't bloomed in half a century. What is washing over you?
So much emotion, at certain points just falling down on my knees, trying to understand.
As the world shut down in the spring of 2020, flowers dormant for decades here started to bloom. Azaleas, tulips, peonies.
What sense did you make of it?
I don't know that I could, or that I still can't. Just that it's magic.
Now, Paul wants to fully restore the garden to how Louise had it, with pools she set in factory building footprints, and a mosaic terrace recently discovered under the dirt.
There was about a foot of compost from everything growing and dying, and then that was gently broomed off. A couple of rains later, Pegasus showed up.
Paul Orpello figures it will cost about $30 million to finish the job. But he's not focused on the money. He's focused on the message.
It's such a great story of resiliency and This whole entire hillside erupted back into life when the world had shut down.
A message of magic he needed then, and we all still need now. For Eye on America, Jim Axelrod, Wilmington, Delaware.
3 years after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, European countries are hoping this will be the year they see tourism numbers back to pre-pandemic levels, but will record visitors' turnout to be too much of a good thing. A record turnout, that is. Riley Carlson reports from London.
The famed Acropolis seems to stand alone above Athens, but a visit here means plenty of company.
The wait definitely, and the amount of people that are here was definitely a little bit overwhelming.
More than 14,000 visitors came to the Acropolis in May, 70% more than May of last year. Tourists have been flocking to some of Europe's most famous landmarks at numbers matching or exceeding pre-pandemic levels.
I did not expect this many people in June. I thought July would be peak and busier.
The soaring numbers prompted the Ministry of Culture to introduce a pilot program where timed entries can be booked online. Dubrovnik, Croatia's popular Game of Thrones town, has started capping the number of visitors and added a tourist tax. France's famed Calanque National Park is keeping a pandemic-era reservation system, allowing just 400 visitors a day compared to the previous 2,500. Small towns are also experiencing the onslaught, like Etretat, a French town of just 1,200 people that sees as many as 10,000 tourists a day in the high season. You won't be able to park potentially, you won't be able to eat in the restaurant, and on top of that, the impact on the environment is greater, she says. For many countries, it's a delicate balance between protecting treasured sites and cashing in on the tourist dollars. Riley Carlson, CBS News, London.
Greece, for instance, is hoping to exceed the 31.3 million arrivals recorded in 2019. Before the pandemic, that was a record year for the country. Well, airlines are bouncing back after severe storms wreaked havoc on flights during the busy Father's Day and Juneteenth weekend. And one travel expert cautions that more significant disruptions could be looming as millions of Americans now prepare to hit the skies for this summer. Patrick Cornell has some tips if your flight is delayed or canceled.
Airlines are recovering this week after weekend storms caused extensive delays and cancellations across the country, and travel experts say more disruptions are on the horizon as summer travel ramps up.
Airlines have not been holding themselves in glory over the past few years.
With this increased demand this summer, air travel disruptions are likely to become more frequent. So what can you do when dealing with delays and cancellations?
When you get that schedule change notification, don't view it as a negative. View it as an opportunity to get switched to a better flight without having to pay anything out of pocket.
Travel expert Scott Keyes recommends requesting compensation. In certain circumstances, if your flight is canceled or delayed for a significant amount of time, you may be entitled to compensation. Check your airline's policies. 2, you can request a rebooking. If your flight is canceled, some airlines can rebook your flight at no additional charge or give you a refund for the unused portion of your ticket.
They would prefer you didn't take that refund, and so instead what they typically are willing to do is to switch you to any other flight.
3, you have the right to information. Airlines should provide you with timely updates and alternative options. And 4, consider requesting a reimbursement. If your flight is significantly affected, airlines can sometimes reimburse you for meals, transportation, and hotel accommodation. For Consumer Watch, I'm Patrick Cornell.
And travel experts also recommend that you document and communicate. If you experience a flight disruption, make sure to keep all relevant documents, boarding pass, tickets, and receipts for any expenses incurred. All right, the names of nearly 100 people and memories are what remains in Surfside, Florida. A look at loss ahead on Mid-Morning. All right, we're back. It's been nearly 2 years since the devastating collapse of a high-rise condominium building in Florida. 98 people died that night, including 92-year-old Hilda Noriega. David Begnaud talked with her grandson, Michael, about loss and moving forward.
So looking at the wall of names is an ever-present reminder. Look here. I mean, the Patels, that was a family.
Yeah.
98 names. This is the list of the lives lost when the Surfside condominium collapsed. 98 names, and only a fraction of the lives changed forever.
It's beyond devastating. I mean, yes, I lost my grandmother and she was the matriarch of our family, but to see how much bigger that it is, how much bigger the losses and the heartbreak goes, has been so eye-opening for me.
Michael Noriega's grandmother, Hilda, who he called Kima, died when the building collapsed early that June morning.
It's just so surreal to look at that crater in the earth just to see emptiness. That's how it feels in the heart. It just kind of leaves a hole in your soul.
Hilda Noriega, at age 92, was the oldest victim.
I had called her that day, and we were talking, and somebody came and knocked on her front door. I could hear it through the phone. She ended the phone call like this: "Hi, Mikey, there's somebody at the door. I'm calling you back. Bye, bye." And she hung up. And those were our last words. And that broke my heart, because every phone call I ever remember with her, same thing: "I love you, Kima. I love you more." And I missed out on those last two opportunities for that.
She, at times, raised you? She was a grandmother and a mother to you?
Yeah, she was like my second mother, because both of my parents are first responders. My father would drop us off at my grandparents' place, and we would spend entire days, we'd spend entire weekends there, where both my grandparents were like my second parents.
Proudly Cuban and a devout Catholic, Hilda Noriega's body was found in the rubble. In her hands, clutched, were her rosary beads.
That's what she would use to pray with. And to think that in my grandmother's final moments of life, that she fell asleep in prayer was such a powerful thing.
Mike, the rosaries were found in her hands?
Yes, on her chest.
It is in those kinds of details that Noriega says he's found meaning, which he writes about in his book, Uncollapsible Soul. What is the point of Uncollapsible Soul?
So Uncollapsible Soul is about how to go through a broken heart without it crushing your spirit. A broken heart is just a season of grieving. We all go through loss. But a crushed spirit, that's something completely different. A crushed spirit is where you lose your faith, your hope, and your purpose.
Noriega says he found hope in the shared grief with other families who have lost their loved ones.
There's a unity that comes in the community of all the people that have gone through such traumatic heartbreak.
And pain is also what gives you empathy. Empathy is a product of pain.
Absolutely. You know, something interesting that I learned through this whole process, a byproduct of pain is passion. How do you know if you're passionate about something? You're willing to suffer for it.
And you know, Noriega found healing in the tangible reminders of his grandmother. Kima's rosaries were one of just a few items returned to the family in this brown paper bag. And this was the first time he'd held them. What are you feeling holding them in your hands?
I'm just remembering this moment. It was a very special moment when that happened, because when the homicide detectives first gave my family and I the news, of course we were all weeping because our fear had come true. There's a quote that I love that says, an inheritance is what you leave behind for someone, but a legacy is what you leave behind in someone. And these rosaries were tangible representations of the legacy that she left behind of love.
As we ended, this happened.
I want you to see something.
Yeah? Oh my gosh.
There's sand
I know
in my
what you're
hand.
about to say. Wow.
From the collapse site. Or dust.
I wasn't expecting that.
Neither was I.
Wow. Wow.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back to wrap things up. Welcome back. Scientists across the pond want to get ahead of the herd when it comes to cutting greenhouse gas emissions from livestock. On a sheep farm in the English countryside, there is a pioneering project underway to breed green sheep. Ian Lee reports.
British farmer Rob Hodgkins hopes to lead his flock to a greener pasture.
You're looking for the needle in a haystack, or that single little black sheep amongst all the white ones.
British scientists are helping with the hunt. What are you looking for exactly?
So what we're looking for is for animals that tend to be low methane emitters.
Professor Joanne Connington and her team hauled in a special methane machine to find out just how gassy each sheep is.
The animals go into a specific location for about 50 minutes, and there is a gas analyzer on the top which monitors the amount of the methane.
Scientists estimate there are about 1.2 billion sheep around the world, and that they're releasing nearly 8 million tons of methane into the atmosphere every year. The carbon cutting concept came from New Zealand, where researchers selected and bred the world's first low methane emitting sheep, slashing harmful emissions by 16%.
There is something about these animals that are better, more efficient at perhaps digesting their food and growing faster.
Just on the field very sort.
For Rob, it's a long-term investment that he sees as a good-natured gamble.
I'm sort of effectively taking a bet that in 10 years, some of the big retailers, supermarkets will be more interested in low methane meat, if you like, meat that has a lower carbon footprint.
Betting the farm on the future of green sheep. Ian Lee, CBS News, Hertfordshire, England.
And farmers hope the pioneering project will reduce emissions from by 25% within the next 10 to 15 years. All right, now stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, stay connected with us. We'd love to hear from you. We're on social media. You can also send us an email. Have a great day.